Tropical forests are one of the world's most important carbon sinks, absorbing over one-fifth of the emission from burning fossil fuels over the year. The latest research suggests that without them, the world could nearly 1 degree Celsius hotter. We can solve climate change without tropical forests, but right now, instead of protecting forests, we're cutting them down. Already about one-sixth of the Amazon has been lost, and some scientists fear that we're nearing a tipping point. That could mean loss of the entire forest. Forests in Indonesia and Malaysia, even the vast of Central Africa, are under a threat as well. And deforestation means carbon pollution. In fact, tropical deforestation worldwide accounts for almost as much emission as all the world's cars and trucks combined. So, losing tropical forest means losing any hope of limiting the rise of global temperatures to 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius. The heart of the problem is economic. As long as it's profitable to chop down forests for timber or clear them for agriculture, we'll continue to lose them. Now, I'm not suggesting that we try to halt capitalism to its tracks. We need to fix the market, not abandon it. We need new and better economic development model for tropical forest countries. And that means changing the incentives so that forests are worth more alive than dead. If we can do that, we will drive investment into tropical forest protection while also producing the goods and service we need. This is the Amazon forest in Mato Grosso, a Brazilian state that large as Texas and a chunk of California combined, and one of the world's largest producers of beef and soy. Mato Grosso is a new model of economic development and forest protection. But back in 2004, Mato Grosso was one of the world's largest carbon polluters entirely because of tropical deforestation. Since then, deforestation is down over 85%. How? Well, Mato Grosso didn't reduce emission by shutting down agriculture. Instead, we support from the government of Germany and Norway. It stepped up enforcements against illegal land grabbers. It empowered local communities and the indigenous population to protect their territories. It worked with agricultural producers and traders across the supply chain to invest in new and more sustainable methods. These methods supported by the Board of Array, NGOs, and business and indigenous organizations. And they worked so well that when a new governor was elected in 2018, he immediately affirmed his commitment to reducing deforestation and continue the state's policies, because he saw how these policies attracting new investment and laying the foundation for sustainable growth. If we're going to stave off climate catastrophe, the world needs more Mato Grossos. Now, Mato Grosso began its bold experiment with public funding, but if we're going to preserve and extend those gains and scale them up jurisdictions around the world, we need a new and more durable and much larger source of forest finance, making forests worth more alive than dead. That means putting a value in standing forests in a way that channels new investments. Hard cash into sustainable green growth that protect the forest while supporting the livelihoods of people who live there. It's a development model that could make Brazil and Indonesia and other forest nations the world's first green economic superpowers that allows them to capture the full value of their natural resources. This is the goal of LEAF Coalition. LEAF stands for Lowering Emission by Accelerating Forest Finance. It is a coalition of 12 companies and 3 countries that has committed $1 billion in finance for forest protection at scale over the next 5 years. One of the largest ever public-private investment in forest protection. The first $1 billion will pay for 100 million tons emission reduction, With the prospect of many more billions to come, I have a special connection to these stories because idea that became a leaf was drawn up with a whiteboard in my old office at Environment Defense Fund over 8 years ago. Now, if I had given this talk then, it would have been purely theoretical, but that was before the full success of Mato Grosso, and before the key building blocks that made life possible were put into place. These three building blocks are essential to any credible market. Accurate measurements, a standard for quality and platform of transaction. First, credible forest transactions require accurate and precise measurements, and thanks in advanced satellite data and remote sensing, we can measure the amount of carbon forest contains and track changes in real time. The second building block is a standard for quality so that buyers of emission reduction can be certain that they are getting the real thing. At Lyft, we use a new approach that focuses on the performance not of the individual forest, but entire official jurisdiction, like a state or nations. It builds in buffer against risk of forest fires, and it requires countries, forest nations, to increase their ambition over time. The third and final building block is a platform of transaction. We created a financial intermediary called Emergent that connects sellers, forest nations that have emission reduction that they can sell with buyers who include companies that are looking to make good on their voluntary climate commitments. You put those three building blocks together and you get a reliable and robust market for forest carbon that enables economies to thrive while protecting the forest. We know it's possible. In Mato Grosso, soy production more than doubled, the cattle increased by over a quarter even as deforestation plummeted. So the LEAF model promises better outcomes forest, better outcomes for people live there, and better outcomes for the forest nation as a whole. But you may be asking, what is in it for the companies? Well, now than ever, companies see a business case for climate action. Their customers are demanding it, their investor, so there are employees. And companies that truly leading on climate means doing things. First, reducing emission in their own operation and supply chains. And the companies that are part of LIFT have all been required to set science-based targets for their emissions. Second, they must contribute to the border fight. And one of the most important ways that these companies or any company can help solve the climate change outside their own operation and supply chain is by protecting tropical forests. So that by repeating, companies in Lyft are investing in forest protection over and above what they're doing to reduce their own emission. It's because it's not substitute, it's a supplement. Because if we're going to solve climate change, we need to achieve both deep cuts in fossil fuel emission. It took over a decade to out of the law of the building blocks in place that made LIFT possible, and the results so far are enormously encouraging. In the next 10 years, if we can expand LIFT globally, we can stop tropical deforestation, the planet, and enable forest nation and local population to thrive and grow. All because we harness the power of the market to reflect to the value of standing forests and make them worth alive than dead. Thank you.